The S.K. Pierce mansion loomed over Gardner like a relic from another time, its grand Victorian architecture both inviting and foreboding. Locals knew the tales that surrounded the mansion, stories of love, loss, and tragedy that clung to its walls like the dust that coated the ornate furniture inside. Each creak of the floorboards seemed to whisper the secrets of those who had come and gone, and for every tale of a distinguished guest, there was a darker counterpart. Elena, a history enthusiast, had long been captivated by the mansion's duality. The stories of Sylvester Knowlton Pierce and his illustrious guests fascinated her. But the tragedies struck a deeper chord. When she learned of a guided night tour, she knew she had to attend, eager to explore the house and its hidden past. On the night of the tour, the air was thick with humidity, casting an oppressive weight over the town. As Elena stepped onto the mansion's porch, the sense of history enveloped her. The grand entrance opened, revealing a darkened foyer filled with the scent of old wood and fading floral wallpaper. Their guide, an older gentleman with a deep voice, began recounting the history of the mansion, detailing its construction and the illustrious figures who had crossed its threshold. Yet, he soon shifted to the tragedies that had marred its legacy. Many believe the house is cursed, he said, his eyes glinting in the low light. Susan Pierce's death, the murder of a young woman, and the tragic drowning of a boy, all these events weave a dark tapestry around this home. And then there's Ano Sari, who simply burst into flames while sitting in a chair. A nervous chuckle rippled through the group. Visitors have reported feeling strange sensations, the guide continued, pushing, cold spots, even sightings of apparitions. Some say they felt a child's hand in theirs, or seen a shadowy figure moving in the corner of their vision. Elena's heart raced. She felt both excitement and trepidation, drawn into the history and the ghosts that seemed to inhabit the very air of the mansion. As they moved deeper into the house, the atmosphere shifted. In the parlor, the guide recounted the story of the drowned boy. Many have claimed to see him in mirrors, or hear him laughing in the hallways, he said, gesturing toward a dusty mirror that hung on the wall. He's known to play tricks on those who dare to linger too long. Suddenly, Elena felt a chill brush past her, as if someone had rushed by her side. She looked around, heart pounding, but the group remained unaware, captivated by the guide's stories. When the group moved upstairs, they entered the former bedroom of the Pierce family. The air was thick, and the temperature dropped noticeably. As the guide spoke of the tragedies that befell the family, Elena felt an undeniable presence and energy that seemed to pulse in the air. As they stepped into the nursery, the atmosphere shifted again. The walls, painted in soft pastels, felt heavy with sorrow. The guide began recounting the story of Susan Pierce, describing her sudden illness and death shortly after moving in. Some say her spirit lingers here, still watching over her children, he said softly, the mood somber. Elena felt a tug at her sleeve, a gentle but firm pull, as if someone or something was trying to get her attention. She turned, startled, but found only empty space behind her. The others continued to listen, oblivious to her experience. Suddenly, a child's laughter echoed through the room, sweet and innocent. Elena's breath hitched in her throat. The guide paused, eyebrows raised. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice low. Elena nodded, heart racing. "It sounded like a boy. Sometimes he plays games with us," the guide replied, glancing around as if expecting to see the child. "But he's not malevolent, just curious." The group moved on, but Elena felt an inexplicable pull to linger in the nursery. She stepped closer to the window, peering out into the night. As she did, she caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror hanging on the wall. Her breath caught as she saw the reflection of a small boy standing behind her, his expression one of curiosity. She spun around, but the room was empty. Heart pounding, she turned back to the mirror, hoping to catch another glimpse. Instead, she saw her own wide-eyed reflection staring back, the space behind her cold and dark. As the group made their way back downstairs, Elena lingered behind, determined to connect with whatever energy was still present. The house felt alive, and she could almost sense the spirits yearning to share their stories. "Are you there?" she whispered, feeling a warmth envelop her. "Can you show yourself?" A sudden rush of air swept through the room, and the lights flickered. A soft voice, almost a whisper, echoed in her mind. "Help us!" Before she could respond, the group gathered at the door, ready to leave. "Come on, Elena!" Tom, a fellow tourgoer, called out. With a last glance at the mirror, she followed the others out, the feeling of the boy's presence lingering with her. As she stepped onto the porch, a shiver ran down her spine. Outside, the night air felt heavy, and the stories of the S.K. Pierce mansion echoed in her mind. The house had claimed lives, but perhaps it also held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Elena knew she had only scratched the surface of its dark history, and the urge to return gnawed at her. As she walked away, the shadows of the mansion stretched long behind her, whispering promises of more to come, more stories, more encounters, and perhaps even a way to help the spirits trapped within its walls. The mansion had revealed its secrets, but she sensed that her journey was far from over. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the S.K. Pierce mansion was calling to her, the mysteries of its dark past wrapping around her like a shroud. Each step away from the house felt heavy, laden with the weight of unfinished business. That night, she lay in bed, thoughts racing. The boy's laughter echoed in her mind, and she replayed the fleeting glimpse of his reflection. "Help us!" The words lingered, resonating deep within her. The following days were filled with restless dreams. Each night, the mansion returned, vivid and haunting. She saw flashes of the boy, glimpses of shadows flitting through the halls, and heard whispers that grew louder with each passing night. Determined to understand what she had experienced, she began researching the mansion's history in earnest. The more she uncovered, the more fascinated she became. Accounts of hauntings, sightings, and tragic events poured in, but one detail stood out: a hidden room. Rumors suggested it contained remnants of the past that were never meant to be disturbed, a place where rituals might have taken place, tied to the tragic events that had unfolded in the house. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Elena decided she had to return. This time, she wouldn't join a tour. She would explore the mansion on her own terms, seeking the hidden room and, hopefully, answers. On a cloudy afternoon, she made her way back to Gardner, the mansion looming before her like a silent sentinel. The air felt electric, thick with anticipation. She approached the front door, heart pounding in her chest. Gathering her courage, she pushed it open and stepped inside, the familiar scent of old wood and dust wrapping around her. The foyer was just as she remembered, but this time, the shadows felt deeper, more alive. She took a moment to collect herself, focusing on the task at hand. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, she began her exploration, retracing her steps from the tour. As she made her way through the rooms, she listened intently, hoping to catch any sign of the boy or the other spirits said to linger in the mansion. The parlor felt heavy with sorrow, and she paused, sensing an inexplicable sadness in the air. "Is anyone here?" she called softly, her voice echoing in the silence. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a faint whisper drifted through the air, barely audible. "Help!" Elena felt a chill run down her spine, but she pressed on, determined to find the hidden room. She made her way to the second floor, the dim light casting long shadows along the hallway. The nursery felt particularly charged, the air thick with emotion. As she examined the walls, she noticed a slight indentation and outline that seemed out of place. With a bit of pressure, she pushed against it, and to her surprise, a section of the wall shifted, revealing a narrow doorway hidden behind a curtain of dust. Heart racing, Elena stepped inside. The room was small and dark, illuminated only by her flashlight. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, as if frozen in time. In the center stood a small table adorned with dusty trinkets, a child's toy, a tarnished locket, and faded photographs of the Pierce family. As she sifted through the belongings, a sudden coldness enveloped her, and she turned to see the outline of a small figure emerging from the shadows. The boy stood before her, translucent and shimmering, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "Help us," he repeated, his voice echoing through the room. Elena knelt, heart racing. "What do you need?" she asked, her voice steady despite the panic rising within her. The boy pointed toward a corner of the room, and Elena's flashlight caught a glimpse of something half-buried beneath a tattered blanket. She approached cautiously, uncovering an old diary, its leather cover cracked and worn. As she opened it, the pages crumbled slightly, revealing the delicate handwriting of Susan Pierce. The entries chronicled her struggles with illness and despair, hints of the tragedies that had befallen her family. But one entry caught Elena's eye, the last one penned in shaky script. "I fear the house holds more than memories. It is alive and it want." The entry ended abruptly, as if Susan had been interrupted. A chill ran through Elena. This was it, this was the key. Just then, the atmosphere shifted again, and the boy's form flickered, his expression growing more desperate. "You have to tell them," he urged, his voice rising. "They must know." "Tell who?" Elena asked, bewildered. "Those who come after," he replied urgently. "Save them." Before she could respond, the boy began to fade, his figure growing translucent. "Remember," he whispered, and with that, he vanished into the shadows. Elena's heart raced as she clutched the diary, the weight of the boy's plea heavy on her shoulders. She knew she had to get this information out. The mansion was not just a relic of the past. It was a warning, a living entity that needed to be respected and understood. As she exited the hidden room, the house seemed to sigh, a breath of release mixed with an unspoken urgency. The echoes of the past surrounded her, the stories of the Pierce family and the spirits trapped within its walls intertwining into a haunting melody. With the diary in hand, Elena made her way back through the mansion, the shadows shifting around her as if guiding her to the exit. She stepped outside into the cool air, the weight of the mansion's history resting heavily on her. Now, she had a mission: to ensure that the tragedies of the past were not forgotten, that the spirits of the S.K. Pierce mansion could finally find peace. She would share their stories, illuminate the truth, and perhaps even help the boy and the others move on from their tragic fate. As she walked away, a sense of resolve washed over her. The mansion had shared its secrets, and now it was time to honor them, to break the cycle of sorrow that had gripped the house for too long. The legacy of the S.K. Pierce mansion would live on not in fear, but in remembrance and understanding. With the diary clutched tightly in her hands, Elena felt a newfound sense of purpose coursing through her veins. She knew the mansion's history had to be shared, not just to inform, but to heal. As she drove back to her apartment, she mentally mapped out her next steps. She'd contact local historians, start a blog, and maybe even arrange community talks to discuss the mansion's haunted history. The boy's plea echoed in her mind. Save them. She couldn't let the stories of those who suffered be forgotten or silenced. That night, as she sat at her desk, she carefully transcribed the most significant passages from Susan Pierce's diary, her heart heavy with empathy for the woman who had once filled those pages with her hopes and fears. Each entry brought the mansion's tragic history to life, weaving a narrative of love, loss, and the palpable grief that had lingered within its walls. But as Elena delved deeper into the diary, she noticed something peculiar, a recurring mention of a dark presence that seemed to haunt Susan's thoughts. The words were often intertwined with her descriptions of illness and despair, hinting at a malevolent force that had cast a shadow over the family. What could she have been sensing? Elena wondered, her curiosity piqued. She felt an irresistible urge to learn more about this dark presence. Determined to uncover the truth, she started researching local legends and any historical accounts related to the mansion. What she found was chilling. Tales of rituals performed by previous owners, dark gatherings in the basement, and whispers of a curse that had befallen those who lived within its walls. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that the tragedies might not have been mere coincidences. There was a pattern, a dark force that seemed to thrive on despair. Elena spent the following weeks reaching out to historians, paranormal investigators, and anyone with a connection to the mansion. She began to piece together a timeline of events, aligning Susan's entries with known incidents of tragedy. But each inquiry was met with reluctance. Many dismissed her claims as mere urban legends, while others warned her to stay away. "You don't want to awaken what's been sleeping," one elderly resident cautioned, eyes filled with concern. "The mansion has a way of drawing people in, only to spit them back out when it's done." Despite the warnings, Elena felt a magnetic pull toward the mansion. It was as if the house itself was beckoning her back, urging her to uncover the final piece of its haunting puzzle. One foggy evening, unable to resist the allure any longer, she returned to the mansion with a small digital recorder, a flashlight, and the diary. She entered through the familiar front door, the air thick with anticipation. As she moved through the rooms, the shadows felt denser, almost sentient. She switched on the recorder, her voice steady as she began to document her findings. "I'm here to learn the truth about the S.K. Pierce mansion," she said, her words echoing in the silence. "If there's anyone here who wishes to speak, I'm listening." The mansion responded with a heavy stillness, as if holding its breath. Elena wandered from room to room, each creak of the floorboards heightening her senses. When she reached the nursery, she felt a chill sweep over her. The air was thick with emotion, a palpable longing that made her heart ache. "Is anyone here?" she called out again, her voice soft but firm. A soft breeze swept through the room, and the temperature dropped further. In the dim light, she could have sworn she saw the outline of a small figure near the window. She focused her flashlight in that direction, and for a fleeting moment, she saw him, the boy she had encountered before, standing silently, his expression filled with sorrow. "Please, I want to help you," she pleaded, her heart racing. "Tell me what you need." The boy's lips moved, but no sound came out. He pointed toward the mirror on the wall, and Elena's stomach dropped. The mirror had become a conduit, a gateway to the past. Gathering her courage, she stepped closer. "I need to know what happened here," she whispered, feeling the energy in the room shift. As she looked into the mirror, a wave of emotions washed over her: fear, grief, anger, and sorrow all blended into one overwhelming sensation. Images began to flicker across the glass. A woman in a flowing dress weeping, a dark figure looming in the shadows, a child's laughter turning into cries for help. Suddenly, the scene shifted, revealing a ritual being performed in the very room she stood in. Shadows danced around a group of cloaked figures, their faces obscured. In the center, a small altar bore offerings, objects that looked eerily similar to the items she had seen in the hidden room. Elena gasped, the truth crashing over her like a tidal wave. The tragedies weren't just accidents. They were a result of something far more sinister, a curse, rooted in the very foundation of the house. As she pulled away from the mirror, breathless, the boy stood before her again, eyes wide with urgency. "You have to stop it," he said, his voice now clear. "End the cycle." Elena nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She knew she had to confront whatever darkness lay within the mansion's history, both to honor the spirits trapped inside and to prevent future tragedies. Steeling herself, she made her way to the basement, where the rituals had likely taken place. The air grew colder as she descended the stairs, and the walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. At the bottom, she found a large, empty space, remnants of what had once been a gathering place for shadows. She switched on her flashlight, illuminating the dusty floor, and began to set up a small circle of salt, a protective barrier she had read about. "Spirits of this house," she began, her voice steady. "I come with respect. I want to understand your pain, to free you from the darkness that binds you here." As she spoke, the air grew thick with tension. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, swirling in response to her words. She could feel the energy in the room intensifying, the spirits drawn to her plea. "I ask for your forgiveness," she continued, her heart racing, "and for the strength to break this cycle. I will share your stories and ensure that your pain is not forgotten." Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing her flashlight. The darkness pressed in around her, but she refused to back down. "I'm not afraid," she shouted into the void. From the shadows, a figure began to emerge, the dark presence that had haunted the mansion for so long. It loomed large, its shape shifting and undulating, a manifestation of all the grief and anger that had accumulated over the years. Elena's heart pounded as she faced it, but she stood her ground, channeling her resolve. I acknowledge your pain. I will not let it continue. You will not claim any more lives. The entity seemed to waver, its form flickering as if torn between darkness and light. You cannot stop what has begun, it hissed, a voice like rustling leaves. But Elena pressed on. I can stop it. I will not allow this to control the future. Your time is over. As she spoke, she felt a surge of energy building around her, a warmth that radiated from the circle of salt. The shadows recoiled, and the air vibrated with a palpable tension. Let them go, she shouted, her voice ringing out with newfound strength. Release them. The entity writhed, its form twisting and contorting. For a moment, Elena felt as if she were standing at the center of a storm, the energy swirling around her, demanding to be released. With one final push, she raised her arms, focusing all her energy on the circle. I command you to leave. Break the cycle of despair. In that instant, a blinding light erupted from the salt circle, washing over the room and engulfing the dark figure. The shadows shrieked and coiled, dissipating into the light until all that remained was a faint echo, a whisper of sorrow fading into silence. As the light began to dim, Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her. The oppressive weight of the mansion lifted, replaced by an air of tranquility. The spirits she had sought to free were finally at rest. She collapsed to her knees, breathless but victorious, feeling the boy's presence beside her. You did it, he whispered, his voice now filled with gratitude. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, overwhelmed by the moment. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to share the stories of those who had suffered. The S.K. Pierce mansion would no longer be a place of tragedy. It would become a beacon of remembrance, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Elena knew she would dedicate her life to honoring the past, ensuring that the mansion's history was not just told, but understood. As she rose to her feet, she felt a profound sense of peace. The cycle had been broken, and for the first time in years, the house felt alive not with despair, but with the echoes of stories waiting to be shared. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.